first off, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the Athenaeum and myself, Miss Sarah Alger.
Thank
and,
you.
Thank you for the audience that came as well. I really appreciate it.
I'm surprised.
Why? I don't know. I feel like you've been around. People know you.
That's the problem.
For the few people who might not know you, can you, in a few words, describe what do the people of Nantucket and the community know you for?
Well, I think probably I'm best known as the moderator of the town meeting, which is a position that I've held since 1997, I think. I was first elected in 1997. So I think that's probably how I'm best known. But I'm also a local attorney, so I sometimes end up having projects that are controversial or end up in the paper, so people might know me from that. And that's probably it. I mean, I live a pretty quiet life, so.
It's pretty good for Nantucket to live a quiet life, I feel like.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Can you tell me a little bit about your upbringing? What made you kind of like, where are you from? What made you decide to kind of stray from home to here?
Okay, so I grew up on the Cape.
Yeah.
I was born at the Cape Cod Hospital. I grew up in Osterville. I went to all the Barnstable schools, graduated from Barnstable High School about 1 million years ago. Went off to college. Didn't really know what I was going to do. Ended up going to law school because that seemed like a good option at the time.
Yep.
I ended up really liking law school. I had a great job in Boston my third year of school, and I had planned to stay there. But I was dating someone at the time who bet me that I couldn't get a job on one of the islands. And so I wrote every law firm here and on the Vineyard. And I ended up being offered a job here. And I ended up taking it. I ended up marrying the person who bet me that I couldn't get a job here. And he spent the next, 40 years, I think, doing a reverse commute to Hyannis where his job started and ended.
Wasn't he the last captain to be Nantucket based?
Yes.
Yeah.
Really, the whole time that he was captain, he was the only Nantucket-based captain.
Wow.
So when he retired, that came to an end. I don't, unless there are weird circumstances like ours, I don't think you'll probably see another Nantucket-based spoke captain.
Especially not a reverse commuter. I mean, that alone is the most rare in the world.
And originally it was the slow boat, and he used to have to go. Sometimes he would work on the Vineyard run, so he'd have to commute from here to the Vineyard or here to Woods Hole and then do that run and then commute back here. Fortunately, he got placed in Hyannis pretty quickly. And then over time, then the fast ferries came in. And, yeah.
Going back a bit to your upbringing, you went to Dartmouth.
I did.
Yeah. What was the decision making for that?
Oh, like all my decisions kind of always influenced by my father and always kind of on a whim. My father went to Dartmouth, so did my grandfather. I grew up hearing about Dartmouth and going to Dartmouth football games and being told that I would never be able to go there.
Oh.
And then surprisingly, when it came time to apply, they were admitting women. So I thought, okay, I can do this. And so I applied and I got in, and I decided I would continue the family tradition and go to Dartmouth.
What'd you major in?
Oh yeah, that's another problem. I majored in Romance languages.
Oh, all right.
French and Spanish, a little bit of Italian, a little bit of Portuguese.
Okay. And
there was some.
How many people go from majoring in Romance languages to
I'm not
to a JD?
I'm not sure, but what made it sort of difficult was that my mother-in-law was my French teacher in high school, and I had absolutely no aptitude for French whatsoever. I was a horrible student, and I was a behavior problem, and I was just not a fan favorite at the Barnstable High School French department. And so the fact that I went on to become a French major, romance language major, was the source of some, I think, confusion on the part of my mother-in-law.
After graduating, did you immediately know you wanted to go into law school, or did you kind of?
I went right to law school.
Right to law school.
Yeah,
okay.
I did.
Was that a realization you came to during your time in college, or? I mean, I'm assuming it must have been, because I don't think anybody goes to college for.
I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do, and I started looking at teaching jobs at private schools, and the people were so discouraging about what that life was like that I kind of rethought it and decided, well, maybe I should go to law school. My father's a lawyer. I could maybe go and work with him. I never actually did that. But so I ended up going to law school.
And you went to BU?
I went to BU.
Nice. And what's it, after leaving BU law school, you said you had a job before Nantucket?
That was during law school.
Oh, during law school.
And I had been offered a place to stay. But
was it a tough decision, or you knew you weren't staying?
I thought I was staying until I got the job. And then I thought, I don't know, I came over here, it was February, it was beautiful, there wasn't a person around. And I thought, I think this could be kind of great.
You didn't see the summer, did you?
No, but it was different, it was different back then. It was very different. So I don't know, it was really kind of a whim, honestly. I just thought, I'll go try that. I didn't anticipate that I would stay here.
And even growing up on the Cape, you never really came out much to Nantucket, or?
No, I think I'd been out like a couple of times, maybe. My parents had honeymooned here. I always really liked it, but I hadn't spent any considerable amount of time here. And I didn't really anticipate staying. I thought I would come and see what it was like and be here for a little bit and then go back to the city.
So when you first came over, where did you work for?
When I first came, I worked for Foley Vaughn, Edward Foley Vaughn, and then it became Vaughn and Dale. I worked there for just about 2 years because I came out to work just before my graduation from law school. I didn't actually stay for graduation. I came out here, I think it was May 8th, and started work, and I worked there for 2 years, and then Arthur Reed and I were talking one day, and he had an office here at the back of Harbor Fuel and an office in Boston. He was working really based in Boston and working there and then coming down here and going back and forth. And so I suggested that I could run his Nantucket office for him. And so that was the idea. I started working for him, it was like in July of a year that we probably don't need to talk about because it was so long ago. And I thought, this is going to be great because I'm going to be able to work on Nantucket, and then when it's slow, I can go to Boston. I'm going to have kind of best of both worlds and get back to the city that I really loved. But what ended up happening was we got super busy. It happened to be the year that Walter Beinecke was selling Sherburne Associates, and it just took up all of our time. I don't think Arthur ever went back to ever went back to Boston. I never spent a day, not one day, in that Boston office. Wow. I never went there. And we kept the office until one day one of his daughters was in Boston and went by the office to use the bathroom or do something, and found that they had another attorney working in our office, and our paralegal was working for someone else, and no one had ever told us. So we said, well, I guess we don't need that office anymore. And we gave that up and moved from the back of Harbor Fuel, and we were sharing a room at the back of Harbor Fuel. It was crazy. It was fun, but it was crazy. Because we couldn't both be on the phone at the same time, and we had 2 paralegals, and they were out in the front with the people who worked for Harbor Fuel, who were so nice to us. Bob Caldwell and Roberta McDonald and Shirley, oh, I forget Shirley's last name, that's terrible, but they were so nice to us, and all the drivers, and it was fun. But it was crazy. And we ended up ultimately moving to Young's Way, which is the office that Arthur still has to this day.
I wonder, it's interesting if Walter Meineke, if that had ever gone through, if that didn't go through, if you'd still kind of be as based here as you would be. I wonder if that was as important.
Probably, because we were pretty busy, but that kind of pushed it over the edge that summer.
And the whole time, have you been mostly real estate law?
Yes.
And a bit of, I don't know if I saw somewhere elder law as well. I don't know.
Trust, no, not elder law really. Trusts
law.
and estates, wills, trusts, and estates.
And so have you been doing that straight out of law school essentially, real estate and?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Is it a little different doing law in Nantucket or not as much? Maybe just because it's a closer community?
Yeah, I think so. That's probably true.
Yeah. Always
You know, we
curious.
know each other, and you develop a certain amount of trust with the other lawyers, and that's nice. So there definitely is a nice community to work in, for sure.
Speaking of other lawyers, you were one of 5 lawyers who founded a safe place, is what I read.
That's right.
Yep. You were one of 5, and I was curious.
That's right, the Fab Five.
Fab 5, yeah, that's what they call you, I bet, huh?
Yep.
You were one of the Fab 5, and what was the process like for that? How did it come about?
So, you know, Rhoda Wyman probably knows this story better than I do, so
okay.
you know, I'll tell it the way I remember it. But so there were 5 of us, and it was Julie Fitzgerald, Rhoda, me, Melissa Philbrick, and a woman named Sarah Greenberg, who isn't here anymore. And we were just talking about what kind of projects could we do. We wanted to do a project. And I think it was Julie who said she had been running into so many issues with domestic violence with her clients, and that there was no place for women or men, for that matter, to turn. And so we thought, well, that would be something we could do. We could start this, see what the interest level is, and start this organization. We were in contact with Independence House on the Cape, and we had a kind of kickoff meeting just to kind of see what the interest would be. And we were having it at the town building, and I think what was then the Selectmen's meeting room, which isn't there anymore. And so many people showed up that we ended up moving upstairs. Roxanne Vieira was the clerk magistrate at the time. She opened up the courtroom for us, and we ended up meeting in the courtroom. We filled up the entire courtroom with women who were interested in doing this organization.
Wow.
So we thought, well, this seems like there's a need and people are interested, and so that's what we did.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long ago was that exactly?
I don't know.
That's a good question. That's totally fair. Time blurs on Nantucket.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably a good 30 years ago.
Wow. That's amazing. And it's still around to this day. And I actually
Yeah, and I think, well, more than around.
I mean,
it's really
incredibly
expanded, and
yeah.
they do a lot.
No, they do. They're a great place. The year prior and the year prior to that, I had volunteered for them in the summers, helped them out, and just simple little things, but it was still a good time. And, it's great that it's nice that something you kind of helped create is still, you get to see, reminders of it constantly.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible that there's still domestic
Yeah,
violence
of
there,
course.
but it's so nice that there's an organization that has now such deep roots and so much support, and has a home, and I think really a place of permanence in the community. It's really great.
Yeah, and this isn't, you've also done you did I know you did a while back, the buzz cuts for kids with cancer. You participated for that.
I did that a couple of years.
Yeah, you did that a few years. And what was that?
I really loved doing that.
Really?
And I tried to get other people to do it with me, but people don't want to have their head shaved. I don't know why.
Yeah.
My kids were appalled. They said my hair wouldn't grow back, and that if it did grow back, it would grow back gray, but it didn't.
It also must be nice for like the summer.
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, because it was in June.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, so.
God, that's
and it's
great.
amazing how quickly your hair grows back.
Really?
Like, yeah.
I'd be terrified.
Like the first couple of days, you look pretty bald, but then like pretty much right after that, there's hair. I mean, it takes a while to get it back like this, but the first year, I grew it so it was long enough so I could donate the hair to Locks of Love, which gives hair to. They give it to a wig maker, and they make it for women who have lost, or people, not just women, who have lost their hair as a result of cancer treatments. Oh, wow. The second time I did it, my hair wasn't long enough, but the first time it was.
And you also have done, I know you've done multiple charity bike rides. You did that.
Oh my God, I've done so many charity bike rides. I wish I was doing them now. I feel very upset with myself for having let my fitness go. I've got to get that back. But yeah, I did the PAMAS challenge from 2013 until 2019 when because they didn't have it, or I didn't do it the year of COVID, and then I got kind of out of the habit. Yeah. And I did the Best Buddies ride, which is another 100. Well, PAMAS challenge is 200 miles.
Yeah.
So I did that from 2013 to 2019, and then Best Buddies and the MS ride, those are 100-mile rides, and I did those multiple times too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Why do you feel so strongly about giving back? Doing charity or doing Buzzcut or even starting Safe Place? What is the need to help your community?
Well, I just think it's important when you have the ability to give, you should give back. And if you're going to take from a community the way that I have been able to do here, you should give back to that community. So I've always tried to do that. You know, I've been on a lot of boards. I'm currently on my 8th year on the NHA board, my 8th and final year on the NHA board.
Wow.
Which is nice. That's been a great experience. But I've done all kinds of things, the Wisconsin Civic Association, and I don't know, I've sort of forgotten, Chamber of Commerce. And
Speaking of giving back, you've been the town moderator longer than I've been around.
I know.
You've been a town moderator since '97. I was born in '98, so that is your first, and it's interesting too because you kind of somewhat followed in your dad's footsteps because he was Barnstable's town moderator.
He was for 20 years until they did away with town meeting.
Oh, so you outlasted him though.
I did.
Look at that.
I know.
What was the mindset? Was it on a whim, or what was your decision making to become the town moderator for Nantucket and remain it for so long?
Well, that's a good question. You know, I just, none of these things are all terribly well thought out. I was in the parking lot of Foods for Here and There,
God,
which
that's past my time.
I forget what it's called now, but Wicked Island Bakery, you know,
Shangri-La.
Shangri-La, yes.
Thank you.
So I was in that parking lot, and Mark Arnold, who owned those two buildings and ran Foods, was in the parking lot sweeping up broken glass. And he saw me and he said, "Hey, I have a question for you. I'm thinking about not running for moderator this year, and here are the people that I think would be good." He started naming off people, and he said, what do you think? And I said, "Oh, yeah, I think they'd be good." I said, "Well, I mean, I could do it." And he said, "Well, I hadn't thought about you." And I said, "No, I know, but, you know, I love town meeting, and I grew up going to town meeting. I used to go and be the timer for my father at town meeting.
Really?
And I loved it. And so I said, "Well, you know, maybe I'll do it." And he was like, oh, okay. I mean, he didn't seem all that enthusiastic. But so I got together, you know, a committee of people to help me, and I don't know. I ran like Mary Beth.
You ran unopposed or against?
No. So that was the hard part. Tim Madden, who had been I think he'd been on the Board of Selectmen at that point. He might have been on the land bank. He ran against me, and so did Curtis Barnes. And I won by like 200 votes, and I don't know that I would have won if Curtis hadn't run, because Curtis took like 300 votes, and I'm not sure, where would those votes have gone if Kurt hadn't run? Would they have gone to Tim? It's probably a pretty good bet. So, but I didn't expect to win, but I worked really, really hard.
Yeah.
And Mary Beth Splain and Jack Weinhold were super helpful to me. Cheryl Bartlett. There were all these people who helped me and told me what I had to do. And some of it was very difficult for me because I'm such a private person. They made this pin for me that was absolutely enormous. It felt like a billboard that I had to wear it all the time. And it said something horrible like Sarah Alger, candidate for moderator. And then I was supposed to go wearing this and like talk to people when I was at the Stop and Shop and then, that back in those days we used to stand out at the landfill and talk to people and hand out stuff. Yeah. I had an index card that they made up for me that had my picture on it, and then these made up things about why I was qualified to run this meeting that I would like hand out to people, and then later I would have to go around and pick it up, where people had like thrown them on the ground and everything. It was awful. And I went to there was no gathering that was too small for me to attend. I just went to everything.
It's kind of how you have to do it though, right? Very grassroots.
It was
campaign.
very grassroots.
Yep.
And then, it was fun. I met a lot of people. It wasn't always pleasant. Like I remember one time standing out in front of the Stop and Shop, handing out these stupid cards, and giving it to this woman who looked at it and threw it back at me and said, "Anyone but her."
Oh,
and I was
God.
like, oh God.
Jeez. You got thick skin though to keep going at it.
Okay.
I feel like that could, for some people.
Well,
what
are you going to do? Your name's already on the ballot. You got to keep going.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then, I don't think people thought that I could do it. There were people who didn't think I was going to be able to do it.
Do you feel as though you get motivated by that?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good motivating factor.
So, and then I won, which was a little alarming.
Have you been unopposed since?
Yes, thank God. Because if I was opposed, I don't know that I could do it again. I think if someone opposed me, I'd probably just say, "Ooh, it's probably time for someone else. Take it away."
I feel like you have such a name recognition that you would just get I think it would take a lot for somebody to run against you and actually even win.
Well, I don't know.
You got a strong
But see, back
hold.
then, they flipped the election and the meeting. Back at that time, the election was on Tuesday and the meeting started the following Monday.
So you had 6 days?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking.
You must have been. Did you feel? You must have felt in over your head a bit, or I would have felt terrified.
Well, I was pretty prepared because going up to the election, I was going to all the finance committee meetings like every day.
Yeah.
They meet a lot, and I was going to all those meetings, and so I felt kind of prepared.
Okay.
But
how did it go? Do you still?
It went really well. I remember Phil Bartlett was the chair of the finance committee at the time, and when it was over, he came over and gave me a big hug and said, "Thank you so much. I didn't think you could do it." It's like, okay.
All right, the confidence, huh?
Yeah. So.
Do you have to do a lot of? Do you know, like, for every year for the town meetings? Do you feel like you do a lot of prep work, or do you just go right into it?
I do less prep work now than I used to, but it's still, it's a lot of prep work. I have to know all the articles. I try to meet with as many people who are sponsors as want to meet with me. I go to the finance committee, I meet with the town manager, the planning director, I meet with the finance committee chair. So there's a lot, there's a lot that goes into it.
Over the years, have you noticed from your tenure as town moderator, have you noticed any significant changes over the course? Be it in either technology?
The technology has been just the biggest change. Having electronic voting now is such a great change.
Before that was what?
I wasn't really sure how that was going to go. It's been like 3 or 4 years that we've had it. And there were definitely pros and cons of doing it. And I would say now I can't, like this past year, we had a meeting, it went all day Saturday, and we had electronic voting, but then we didn't finish. So we had to go to Monday, and the electronic voting people couldn't stay. So we had to go back to hand counting, and it felt so painful to go back to hand counting. And then we had an article that only passed by one vote. And so I've heard a lot about, well, how do we know it was just one vote? And if we'd had electronic voting, maybe it would have been further apart or closer, or the vote would have been different. I have no idea. You know, I just deal with what they give me to deal with at the time. But
when I had first started looking for people to interview, because I watched the whole town meeting Saturdays and Mondays, which is a huge affair. I was surprised at how long it was going to be. I think it was like 8 hours or 9 hours the first day. It felt like.
Oh yeah.
It was just going through it all, and it was the amount of things that I found so interesting. Like you almost became like a. You almost had like a folk style, like the things, like the mannerisms that please no clapping, please no booing, please no clapping, please no booing. Your time's running out. You've eclipsed it. You're over your time.
Right.
Like it's like herding.
It is a little bit like herding cats, a little bit.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
It's so hard to keep people to time limit.
I know.
It's so hard.
And then
particularly when someone has a lot of points to make, it's really hard to say, look, wrap it up, because what people don't realize is when they start talking too long, they lose their audience.
And it's also tough is that the people who look at the time limit and they get freaked out by it.
That's
and they're
right.
like, I only have 15 seconds. It's like you're wasted probably like 30 seconds by constantly talking about the time. It's
That's
like,
right.
And I'm like, oh man, like I'm watching. I'm like these poor, like they're losing it all this time. But I couldn't imagine if you had a longer time limit. I feel like it would be like a 10-day affair. I've heard
awful.
I've never seen it, but I've heard you've had like 5 days or 4 days. I couldn't imagine.
No, I think the longest we ever had was 4 days.
Oh my God, I'm shocked.
But that's just nights, not during the day.
Oh, I see.
Just night.
Because I was shocked. I was like, I feel like as Nantucket gets crazier and crazier, the town meeting gets longer and longer. It's like I couldn't imagine it being 4 days prior. I could see it now being some crazy
I feel like
amount.
we used to start like on Monday, but we would start like at 6:30 maybe, or even 7, and then it would go like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and sometimes Thursday. And then we've run into holiday issues, and
there's so many too. It's like all the different religious holidays, regular holidays.
Right.
It is hard to.
And school vacation, and now the school, because the school is so crowded, they have a really hard time accommodating the meeting because they use the spaces.
And it's even how much busier it's getting. I mean, where else could it go? I don't even know.
Well, there isn't anywhere.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
we've talked about it, and there's really no great alternative location.
If you're overbooked, what is people just not allowed to vote? I mean, you have to live them.
Well, we have to accommodate every single person who comes. So that's why we have the gym. We've never reached capacity in both the main hall and the gym at the same time. And then we have backup plans for other rooms in the school. But
how do you think voter attendance is on Nantucket?
it's been low.
Yeah.
It's been low, but it's been low at the ballot box too.
What do you think? Do you think it's just symptomatic of than how it is nationally? Or?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think people are too busy and they're kind of disengaged and they don't.
Have you noticed that being a trend over the years, or just always since you've been town moderator?
No, I think it's definitely getting worse. If there's a big issue, it will bring people, but they won't stay.
They'll just stay for the one article and head out.
Right, and then that's always kind of been the case. I can remember years ago when Wayne Holmes was moderator when I first moved here, having an issue that involved the school, and the meeting was absolutely packed, and then as soon as that vote happened, it emptied out. So that's always been an issue.
Have you noticed over the course of your time as town moderator, I guess I could say public discourse or incivility? Have you noticed it getting worse, or is it always just contentious?
I think it's gotten a little worse, but people are by and large okay.
Yeah.
Although, was it 2 years ago? I had to have the constables come and take two people out.
Yeah, that was a. Yeah, I saw that.
I've never had that happen before.
Really? Yeah, that was that like a. Not shocking, but was it surprising to you to have to be able to actually say the words at town meeting? Constables, please come over and separate these two?
No, I mean, I've always been prepared for that.
Yeah. This is like a bucket list item for you?
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, exactly. Got that done. No, I'm glad it hasn't happened more.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
What do you think has there been any notable town moderator moments for you ever over the years, or is it all just blend together?
It all kind of blends together, honestly. I haven't had any of those really big moments like Mark Arnold had someone propose one time to someone.
Way. Is that even allowed?
You give a little leeway for that, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting place. Would you like tell them like please no proposing in the?
No.
Would you tell them that during it?
No.
No clapping afterwards after when people start.
No clapping for that. Yeah. And I've been lucky to have Mary and Al Novissimo doing all the behind the scenes electronic stuff all these years. They kind of make it all work seamlessly.
Of course. I'll repeat it for the microphone.
Yeah, you loved it for your working with your father. Do you still love it now after all these years?
So the lady asked, you loved it working for your father. Do you still love it now after all these years?
Oh, I do. I wouldn't do it if I didn't still love it.
That's fair.
That's the question I always ask myself. Of course, it's a little bit like giving birth in that, you have the meeting in April or May, or one time we had it in June. By the time it's time to pull your papers in January, you kind of don't remember exactly how you felt at the end of the meeting. So I think that's part of why I kept doing it, but I do still enjoy it, and that's what I ask myself every year. Do I still like doing it? Because the minute I don't like doing it, I'm not going to.
Of course.
Don't you get a little disappointed when everybody walks out? I've never walked out, but I thought, why can't these people stay for the duration? Does it upset you?
The lady asked, do you ever feel disappointed when people walk out after a major article, and does it disappoint you?
Not really. I wish people would stay. I wish people would see the importance of voting on every article, because town meeting is the legislative body for the town. So you're doing the work of a legislator, and I would like to see people engaged and wanting to stay and vote on every issue. But I understand that some issues are more important to people than others, and it's just part of what happens.
How do you think Nantucket could help increase their voter attendance, or do you think it's...
Oh, I don't know. We've tried so many different things. I don't know that there's any one thing we could do. I thought the electronic voting, because it makes it so much faster, would make it more appealing. We've tried to do things like, we had childcare a couple of years, and that was kind of a bust because it turns out people didn't want their kids out, or they didn't want them with people they didn't know, or we've had buses, but people are pretty married to their cars here, so they really want to be able to come and go the minute they want to come and go. I don't know. I'm open to any suggestions. We've had food trucks. We talked about having food trucks at the last meeting, and then there was an issue with the school, and we ended up not being able to do it. But I'm thinking we're going to try to revisit that for a future, probably a future Saturday meeting. It feels like there should be a way to have a Saturday meeting where people could like have their kid, maybe all the businesses would close down so that people could go and vote. I don't know.
Try to make like a national vote
have a
day.
place for all the kids to go with organized activities.
The thing that's hard is it's like I feel like, at least I've only really watched one meeting and I've got snippets from the others, but it feels like it'd be hard to just run it one day nowadays. It seems like
it's doable if there isn't a really big issue. And the minute you hit a big issue, that's going to take a good hour or more, and then you just can't do a warrant that's over 100 items.
That's tough. I feel like that's.
And our warrant is bigger than almost any warrant that I've ever seen in the Commonwealth. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, a lot of
know
places the warrants are like 30 or 40 articles.
Why do you think Nantucket loves their warrants?
Yeah. So, and we also have the most engaged citizenry, which is great because there are so many citizens articles, but it makes the warrant so big.
Why do you think why do you think Nantucket's warrant is so
I don't know.
popular?
I mean, I think we just have people who are civically engaged, have a lot of good ideas, and aren't afraid of putting them forward. So we have a lot of home rule petitions. I think we have, Alan probably knows this better than I do, more home rule petitions than any other town.
Wow.
We have a lot of stuff that we send up to the state, and a lot of citizens articles.
Do you find, one other last question about town moderatorship, do you feel any misconceptions about town meeting that people have?
Oh, I can't think of any. I'm sure there are some, but I'm sure I'll be hearing about it later, but I don't know. I know people have said that they don't know what they're voting on sometimes, and I don't really know how to fix that. Because we have Meet the Articles, which is a forum that's put on by the Civic Association. The town manager puts out a plain English guide to the warrant articles. I try to explain every time that we vote what people are voting on and what the effect will be. So I don't know. I think it's possible that it's just something that isn't going to work for us forever. I mean, I kind of hate to see us go to a town council form of government because you're suddenly turning all your decision-making power over to a group of 9 or 11 or 13 people. And I have a feeling people aren't going to be happy with that either. So I don't know.
I could foresee that. And you've even talked about, I feel like I've seen so many different times about going to like a representative town meeting.
Yeah, a representative town meeting is a good possibility.
Do you think it would solve any issues that town meetings even currently face?
Well, I mean, it certainly would have during COVID, because with representative town meeting, you can do Zoom and all kinds of stuff that you can't do with an open form of town meeting. You hope that the people who vote, because that's their job and they've been elected to do it, you hope that they come and stay the whole time and have educated themselves and are voting in a way that their constituents want them to vote. Probably the hardest thing about going to a representative form is going to be figuring out how people vote, because we don't have precincts. And so how, would we just vote for, and how would you, like if you got a ballot and you had to vote for 150 people, how would you do that?
Yeah, that would be tough.
in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I know it's been proposed a
It's
handful.
been done, so there must be ways to do it. I'm not up on it.
That's fair. Well, seems like to some degree, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And it feels like it's not completely broken, maybe. But on another topic, you've been a part of Nantucket for a while. How do you feel about, over the course of your time on Nantucket, how do you feel about the changes Nantucket has had? Do you appreciate or miss any aspects of the island's evolution? I know, right?
Well, I mean, I think change is inevitable, and you gotta sort of embrace it. But I definitely miss those Februaries when there was nothing happening and not a car in the street, and you could walk the whole big block and not run into a soul.
Is February your favorite month?
I kind of think it's becoming that.
You must be.
I keep
you were one of the
mentioning it,
few.
right?
Yeah, I know, it's like a few times. It must be, you're one of the few, I feel like.
Well, I'm a bit of a hermit, so I
Yeah.
like that. I'm also lucky because I live in Sconset, and I think where I live has changed probably the least of anywhere I can think of in all the time that I've lived there. I still have the same neighbors that have been there
way.
almost the entire time.
Wow. That's surprising.
Yeah, I know.
I feel like that. I don't think I've ever heard that from anybody else.
Yeah. I mean, my 4 immediate neighbors have been there. Well, 3 of the 4 have been there the entire time I've lived there, and 1 has been there at least 25 years, if not more. I mean, I've seen their kids be born and grow up and go off and have children, so.
What's it, do you feel as though, with the island getting increasingly busier, what are some of the challenges you think Nantucket's is currently facing that you're worried about?
Well, I worry about infrastructure for sure, and how we keep that up. The traffic is definitely a concern.
I don't know what you do about that.
I don't know.
Smarter minds than me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's usually my answer to those questions, is my cop out.
I know someone asked me recently, aren't you worried about climate change and the rising tide? I said, well, I'm worried about it, but I'm thinking it's going to be younger people than me that take that on, because by the time it really becomes an issue, I should be long gone.
Have you noticed anything different in terms of your practice over from when you started out here in the 80s?
Yeah.
Your practice, and now, or you just working out here to now? Is there anything? I mean, I would assume it must be with real estate law. It must be much more swamped right now, I would think.
When I started, we didn't even have a fax machine.
Oh, God.
Think about that.
That's
I mean,
insane.
We've gone from like typewriters with carbon paper, literally, and copy machines, to fax machines are now virtually obsolete.
Yeah.
They were like an enormous thing.
Yep.
FedEx used to be, when FedEx came, it was like a game changer. And now, I mean, so the pace and the pressure is definitely different. Because when I first started, like I would do a purchase and sale agreement and I would put it in the mail and I would know like, oh, now I've got a good 3 days before I have to do anything with that again. I can turn and go do this other thing. Well, what happens is now I do an agreement and I send it out, and a half an hour later I've got 18 emails about it, and so it's just the pace. The pace has really become kind of crazy. And email I used to think was so wonderful, and now it's just almost overwhelming.
Do you bring your work home with you? Or do you try to?
In what way?
Emails. You checking your emails at home, or?
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty much working all the time.
Oh, man.
But, yeah.
It must be, at least in some regard, I would think back in the day, you didn't have to work all the. I mean, I guess you could bring back, no, I would assume, right? You're not so stuck on the emails, and you could
No,
separate yourself a little
you could
bit.
really separate yourself, and that doesn't happen anymore. Now it's like, and people will email you all weekend, night and day.
Oh.
And then if you don't respond, they'll be like, if they send you something Saturday, you're likely to get something Sunday. I'm following up on this email I sent you yesterday. I haven't heard from you.
Oh.
It's like, okay, well, because I was trying to do something different.
Trying to have a bit of a life
Right,
outside of
or
work.
trying to find a time when I can actually get something done. That's the other part that's really difficult. Like if I have any drafting I have to do that takes any concentration, I have to kind of shut the email down. And
Does your work remain the same level of business throughout the year, or do you notice, is it uptick in the summer?
oh, I'm pretty much busy all year round. The only thing that's different is that people drop by a lot in the summer.
Oh, interesting. And I'm sure you love that.
Oh yeah. Sometimes, I mean, I do love to see people, and I
Yeah.
love to put faces with names, and but I don't always love it. I don't love it when I'm really like right in the middle of something that I really want to get done, and people are dropping by or people are coming and saying, how come, where's my, when are you going to do?
Now, where
not that
exactly
that
is your office
doesn't
again? No, I'm
happen all that much, fortunately, but.
That's good. We're getting a little closer towards the kind of big question, and I figured might as well. Can I ask you a few rapid fire questions?
Sure.
All right. First one's gonna be a little rapid fire, but you can go a little more. Go a little more in depth. But this is a good one for you, I think. Personally, I found out, you're a big reader. If you could reread a book or read a book again for the first time, what book would it be?
Oh, that's so hard because I like so many books.
I know. You can pick one or two. Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I probably would say Pride and Prejudice. I love that book. But if I was going back to when I was a kid, it would be like the first Nancy Drew I ever read.
Oh, okay. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I've never had a chance to read it, but I found if I had my mother had a collection of those kind of books.
Yeah, I tried reading them with my kids. I don't recommend it. They have not aged well. We're too sophisticated now. You would never, it's like, Nancy, what are you doing? Going into that haunted castle, Why is this happening? Where's Carson? Why isn't he stopping you from driving that powder blue coupe to wherever it is you're going?
What book are you currently reading right now?
What book? What I'm reading, you're going to die. It's Middlemarch.
Really?
I'd never read Middlemarch.
Huh.
So I'm about halfway through.
How are you enjoying it so far?
I like it. I think I like the humor. It's very long. It's very long.
Did you ever read a shorter book like The Diving Bell and the Butterfly yet?
I did read that. I loved that book.
I know, that was good.
After we talked, and I also read that Trevor Noah book that you recommended.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
that was
perfect.
good too. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, very good.
And then that led me to Middlemarch. Don't ask me how, but
I don't. Yeah, it's an interesting jump. I have to read more Nantucket-based books. I feel like I haven't read nearly enough. Like other than I don't know Moby Dick, but I feel like that's like.
Right.
That's like obvious. I feel like everybody, to some degree, is going to read that at some point in their life. But I feel like I haven't read nearly enough Nantucket-y books. Like either.
Like what?
I don't know. I don't think I've never read any of.
Nat Philbrick's books.
I've read one of his books. I read what is it? The one where he explains Moby Dick.
Oh yeah.
That's like. I feel like that's such a lame one to have read. But I haven't read any of the other ones. But even why have I always forgotten Eileen? What's her line? Or Hildebrand?
Ellen Hildebrand?
Ellen Hildebrand, that's her name. I haven't read any of hers, and I feel like she's very popular.
She is very popular. I have never read any of her books
Okay, well,
either,
good. Now
which
I
is
feel better.
terrible,
All right, that's awesome. I don't feel like I'm the only person that feels bad now.
No, I do feel bad about that. When I first was working here, I was working for Arthur at the time. She was a paralegal for Richard Lofton.
Really? Huh.
And she was writing a book while she was in her spare time while she was working for Richard.
That's awesome.
And eventually she grew so popular that she quit working for Richard and just went writing full time.
Wow, that's awesome.
And she's been amazingly successful. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I know, it's amazing for her.
I know.
But yeah, I feel on the record, not
Well,
having read
it's
any
okay.
of her books. I feel very guilty.
Well, we're both on the record for it, so.
I think they're kind of beach reads, and I'm not a big beach reader.
Well, there you go. At least you have a good cop out. I am a beach reader, and I don't have a cop out. So.
No, I don't really. I guess I don't really read anything that's in that kind of genre.
That's fair. Are you more of a fiction or nonfiction?
Oh, it used to be fiction, but I've kind of turned to nonfiction.
Okay.
I really like memoir and autobiography and yeah.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, probably my father telling me I should take the job and move to Nantucket.
The road not taken?
Yep.
Yep.
That's
Oh,
right.
no worries.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Yeah, didn't he mention the road not taken to you?
He did.
Yep. Something I managed to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You probably watched that Michael Kopko interview from 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Any historical figure.
Yep.
I think Virginia Woolf.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. I just think she's such an interesting person. I would love to talk to her and kind of hear how her mind worked.
What's one thing on your bucket list you haven't accomplished yet?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think I'd really like to go to Greece.
Okay.
And I've never done that. So
That's a good one. If you had to pick one place, what's your all-time favorite spot on the island?
on the island?
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it, but it's my house in Sconset. That's my favorite place.
That's fine. I had a sneaky suspicion that was what you were going to say. So that's a perfect spot.
Yeah. If I couldn't be there, I'd probably go to the beach at the end of Washing Pond.
Okay. What's your favorite way to unwind and relax after a long day?
I usually go home and have dinner and watch Jeopardy.
Oh,
Honestly.
perfect.
Ridiculous, isn't it? Maybe
Do you like
a little reading.
Do you like the new hosts?
Well, it's going to be terrible for me to say this, but I prefer Ken DeMayem.
I feel like Ken, but Ken has been around. He's such a he
Right.
is Jeff. You know, he's been around.
He kind of gets it, but I mean, I prefer Alex over.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Last question. It's a doozy. I can still I'm not able to memorize it, and it's a really easy question. So, what do you envision for the future of Nantucket, considering its rich history, unique character, and the evolving challenge it faces? What are your thoughts on how the island can preserve its cultural heritage while embracing progress and addressing the needs of both residents and visitors?
In like 5 words or less.
This is a one sentence or less answer. No, you take your time or whatever you want to say.
Wow, that's really a hard question. I mean, I think it's really important for all the nonprofits to keep going and have the support of the community. I think things like the Athenaeum is really important to the history and culture. I mean, we have so many great nonprofits. I don't want to leave anybody out, but I think they're all important to preserving what we love about Nantucket. The HDC and keeping building down to a dull roar and really sticking by their guidelines is critical. And supporting the Conservation Foundation and the Land Bank and the other organizations that buy up land and preserve it and keep it open for people to enjoy. I mean, if we didn't have that, we'd really be, I think, in pretty serious trouble. I love some of the stuff that Remain has done. I love the fact that we have 2 bookstores that do slightly different things, even though they're run by the same person now. but I love the fact that we have them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, things like, I never even mentioned all my work with the new school.
Yeah.
That was building that building and doing that for so many years was something that I loved. And I think, you know, keeping educational choice is important and providing housing. And I just don't know how we do it all, but.
Yeah, I know. It seems like it's a harder and harder task each year to
Right.
maintain. And I don't know if it's just, it feels that way because you're in the moment, or if it always is, to some degree, felt that way. I don't think so, but I'm also so naive to it all.
You know, I don't know. One of the first things that I ever went to that the Chamber of Commerce hosted, and this would have been in the 80s, was a symposium on the housing crisis. And I just feel like we've never really come upon a solution, and we've let a lot of opportunities go by. But I feel like things are happening now, and maybe that will make a change. I don't know.
Are you an optimist or a pessimist for the future?
I'm an optimist.
That's good. Look at that. So far, we're straight through all optimism.
I'm always been an optimist.
So far, I've yet to get one person to be pessimistic.
Really?
Yeah. Everybody who's been interviewed has said they're an optimist.
Oh.
So that's good.
Yeah, that is good.
I'm just worried about the one that eventually that I have to tell them that I tell them they're the only person.
Oh, that's all right. They're such a pessimist, they won't care. They'll see that as another bad sign.
Is there anything else you want to mention? You'd like to add?
I don't think so. Thank you so much for
No,
having
it's
me. I
been
feel like I
wonderful.
have not really been all that interesting, but
I think you're incredibly
that's
interesting.
that's the story.
Well, I think it's an incredible story, and I want to thank you again. I want to thank the audience. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for
thank you.
attending. I really appreciate it, and thank you, Sarah.
Thanks.